Exactly 5 minutes past 8. You're still watching Smart Man's Business. I'm Andrew Barigi. Here going to be driving you all the way. Well, good morning once again. How you doing? How you finding the fresh week? Of course, it's also a fresh month. At the same time, it's October 2nd and it's a Monday. Well, of course, like I always tell you, it's always good to reflect on what didn't work out the previous. It could be a week, it could be a month or a year, but not for this case in time. It's very important to find out what didn't work out last month in my business, in my career, in anything you're trying to pursue. You know, business is actually quite something very wide. So when you get back to your drawing table, it's very good to refocus and see how you can actually not repeat the same mistakes you did last month, so that you can actually progress effectively this particular month. But of course, quite a number of discussions are going to be coming up. Like I told you before we went into the break, that of course we shall be taking a look at the financial priorities. What are the priorities? Ways you get standing at financially, you know, of course, considering the last quarter of the month, of the year, of course, not the financial year, but for the year 2023. That is our major focus. But still, before I get into that conversation, I would love to remind you that the Markets on the Zebra platform, just a few minutes, like about 8 minutes from now, countdown, the markets are going to be in operation. Now you can participate by simply dialing *292#, which is the USSD code that will avail you with options where you'll be in position to actually buy government bond securities for a fee of 15,000 Ugandan shillings. Yes, at 8:15 a.m. that's where the markets are going to be opening and run all the way to 3:15 p.m. That is East African time. This is effective Monday up to Friday, apart from the weekends and the public holidays when these markets are never accessed. But I always tell you that's not the big deal unless you have the rest of the days to make money, something which I believe it's quite key and important when it comes to your financial growth and development. So Zebra made this a reality, and that's why it boldly comes out and tells you, well, it's my money, it's my future. And Altered East Africa also tells you that, well, we need to do something new for ourselves. Remember, it is 2023. Well, now at this point in time, let's get inspired as we get into our business tips and words this morning. Well, the secret to success is to simply do the common things, but in quite a different way. And because so many times we fantasize about success, we say, hey, what is that top secret? And in most cases, when we get into those books of top 5 secrets to get rich, you're probably expecting to find quite some strange things from those books that actually will make you rich, but you're going to be shocked that these are the very daily things. But the only challenge is that we read them from the surface. That's why they seem common. We are so used to these words. But the bigger picture here is that if you can't be in position to actually get the revelation of those words, that is the power. Getting the revelation of those words, and it hits you, you see it from a deeper perspective. It all makes sense. That's why John D. Rockefeller, one of the wealthiest people to ever exist on this world, well, I know there have been quite a number of rich people, but at least he was rich. Let me say in the United States of America, tells you that the secret to success is simply to do the common things, but uncommonly. You don't do them the common way. And also we had something to do with focusing on social media, of course, which is the new trend for the 21st century when it comes to marketing and sales of various aspects of your life. Well, that is it regarding our inspiration moment. And now, of course, as we get into our discussion of the day, the theme for this day about the economic outlook, that is for the last quarter of 2023. But of course, on top of that, we get to also realize that there have been quite a number of events that have been happening globally, and they definitely have an impact on the East African region, on the African continent, but in particular to Uganda itself, because we get to realize that the burden is shifted from the international bloc, it comes to Africa, and once it comes to Africa, it is shifted to the different regional groupings. For example, in Uganda, to the East African community, talking about countries in the Southern Africa, they have the SADC, ECOWAS and all that. Now, from those regional groupings, they are now pushed to the individual nations that actually subscribe to those particular regional groupings. So that is what we are trying to look at today as we break down these matters. But of course, we know that according to my reporting here, that global events since January 2023 and their potential impact have had quite a great potential impact. That is to Uganda's economy. And now, of course, there is some aspect to do with the rising interest rates. Now, of course, we are comparing how these global events have had effects on Uganda's economy. In other words, the operations within the country. Now, of course, we've seen a rising interest rates. That is, central banks around the world have been raising interest rates in an attempt to combat inflation. Of course, we've seen it with the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve Bank, the Bank of Australia, the Bank of Japan, most especially for those of you that actually love doing forex trade, and you follow the FX street, the forex street. Yeah, you can actually see these banks have always been in interplay to do that. Now, of course, this has made it more expensive. That is for businesses to borrow in Uganda, which has led to slower investment and economic growth. Now, of course, we've been mentioning it earlier with Godwin in matters to do with mortgages, and of course, with the National Bank of Commerce of Tanzania to provide the mortgage loans to the Tanzanians. And we're trying to compare it with the Uganda's case, where actually interest rates are really very high, and it's it becomes a little bit harder for you to borrow money if you're not at a certain degree of income from that perspective. Now, we see that Uganda Central Bank, that is the Bank of Uganda still, has also raised interest rates, which is likely to have a negative impact on the economy. And of course, we are looking about the outlook of 2023, the last 3 months. But of course, before we get into those last 3 months, we are trying to see so far the first months we've hit. How has it been like the last 9 months of the year 2023? Now, of course, we also see something in here to do with a weaker global economic growth. Now, we know that the global economy is expected to grow more slowly in 2023 towards the end than in 2022. This is a fact. Now, this is due to a number of factors, including the war in Ukraine, which is now coming to its 1.5 years almost, the rising interest rates, something to do with the supply chain disruptions, all these, of course, brought about by the war. And we see something here to do with a weaker global economy, of course, will mean less demand for Uganda's exports. Now, this is the key factor because later on into the show, we shall be discussing matters of the export, because there is something to do with halting of Uganda's exports. But still, regardless of that, there is always a way out to survive. But of course, we shall be taking a look at that. Well, at this point in time, let's take a look at the previous global events, and we have our figures in there as we take a look at how these global events have actually affected Uganda's economy. And yes, now what we are seeing in there, it's more of a projection. Of course, we've been talking about the past in my past discussion, but now, of course, Uganda's economic outlook for quarter 3 2023 based on the past global events. Now, this is what we expect for the fourth, the GDP, like how is it going to be? Now, something here we see that Uganda's GDP growth is expected to slow to around 4% in quarter three. Yeah, down from 5% in quarter two. Now, of course, something to do with inflation is set to remain high, reaching 10%, and that is in quarter three. Of course, taking a look at these last months of the year, and the foreign direct investment is declining in quarter three 2023 due to weak economic outlook, and something to do with exports to experience lower growth in quarter three, as a result of that. Now, we also know that the projected the slowdown in GDP growth means that there will be fewer jobs available, and wages will likely stagnate. This will make it harder for households to actually make ends meet, according to that. And inflation means that the prices of goods will definitely rise, while the wages will not keep up to the rising prices. Now, that is another dilemma. Now, this will erode household purchasing power and make it more difficult for households to afford basic necessities. Now, we know that the decline in foreign direct investment, which we're also looking at in there, it's likely the foreign direct investment is declining in 2023. Due to of course, the entire global outlook. Now, foreign direct investment creates jobs, and we know that it boosts economic growth. Now, a decline in the foreign direct investment will mean fewer jobs and slow economic growth, which is likely to hurt the household incomes at the end. And exports, which are a major source of direct exchange earnings for Uganda, a slowdown, of course, also means the exchange will mean less foreign exchange that is available, that is for to import goods and services, which will lead to higher prices and slower living standards, that is for households. But of course, we see that Ugandan government has measures to mitigate these global impacts, which will help to some extent, and but it is likely that the household incomes will still decline in the next 3 months. And of course, we know that as some of the projected economic slowdown and rise of inflation could impact also the household incomes in Uganda as a result of that. Now, the groups of people that are likely going to suffer here are three. We have the farmers, we have the workers in the informal sector, and the low-income households. Now, we see that farmers may see their incomes decline due to lower crop prices and higher input costs. Lower crop prices, higher input costs, definitely that's some sort of a loss in some sort of a way. And of course, we also see workers in the informal sector are also going to be one of the affected parties, as they may see their incomes decline due to fewer job opportunities and lower wages at the same time. We've been discussing that due to reduction of foreign direct investment. And now we have something here to do with the low-income households. As you see, low-income households are likely to be the hardest hit by the economic slowdown and the rise in inflation, as they spend, that is a higher proportion of their income on basic necessities, basics, food. So many really have income to save aside, to save them from an evil day or for an investment. So you can actually see that. Now, a slowdown in GDP, like we said, would mean all those factors. But definitely, despite all that happening, what is the way forward? Does it mean that people are not actually going to be able to survive in such a time? Well, definitely there must really be a way, regardless of that, because actually I've seen people all over the internet having lectures on telling people actually how can you survive during a recession, during a time when there is actually low economic activity happening in a place. How can you actually make it to survive? That is something to really check into that, because once you can do that, that means when the stabilization is achieved once again, you will actually go quite very, very, very far. Yes, we are still into the discussions, what we expect for the next 3 months, and how can businesses really position themselves to actually overcome the possible effects here. Of course, just to recap, in case you just joined us, we saw something here with the gross domestic product that is expected to slow to around 4% in the next 3 months, and inflation is expected to remain high. That is at 10%. And this last quarter, of course, we also saw matters to do with foreign direct investment, which is expected to decline in the third quarter of 2023 due to weaker, that is a global economic outlook, and also a decline in exports. A decline in exports. And we've seen all these avenues, most especially foreign direct investment and exports, because most of these two factors are bringing incomes, foreign exchange into the country, which is a key factor when it comes to stabilizing the value of the shilling. Well, that is it for now. Just to remind you that the market's on the Zabo platform officially and now on 6 minutes ago. That's when the market started to operate. Now you can participate by simply dialing *292#, which is the USSD code that will avail you with options where you can actually be in position to buy government bonds and securities for a fee of just 15,000 you get in shillings. Now at 8:15 a.m. exactly, that's when the market's opened, and they'll be running all the way. That is to 3:15 p.m. Which is the East African time. Yes, 3:15 p.m. Now this happens Monday up to Friday, apart from the weekends or the public holidays where these markets cannot be accessed. But of course, that's not the big deal in here. At least we have the rest of the days to capitalize and make money, something which I believe personally is quite important when it comes to your financial growth and development. That's why Zaba clearly tells you that it's my money, it's my future. And Doltex East Africa tells you that you need to do something new for yourself. Remember, it is 2023. Well, now we're going to go take a short break. And when I return, maybe when we resume with this particular point of discussion, we shall be taking a look at, despite the forecasts we've seen for the last 3 months, what is the way out for the small businesses to actually survive? Yeah, we shall be breaking down those matters further. Well, but for now, we're going to take a short break. And when we return, sports and business entertainment. Stick around.